When my daughter looked the psychiatric evaluator straight in the eye and said, "Doctor, my mother thinks she's some kind of financial expert, but she can't even balance her own checkbook anymore," I knew my $47 million inheritance was about to disappear. 3 days later, she would be begging that same doctor to release me immediately. If you're watching this, hit that subscribe button and let me know where you're watching from, because what Jennifer discovered about who I really was would destroy her completely. Let me tell you how a 71-year-old widow used skills Jennifer never knew I had to turn her inheritance scheme into the biggest mistake of her life. 12 months ago, I was Margaret Sullivan, 71-year-old widow trying to figure out how to live without Robert, my husband of 43 years. When Robert died of pancreatic cancer last winter, he left me with more money than I'd ever imagined. $47 million from pharmaceutical patents he'd developed over decades of research. The problem was, I'd never handled the business side of our lives. Robert managed investments, taxes, legal documents, estate planning. I managed our home, our family, our daily routines, our social calendar. Now I was supposed to understand portfolio management, estate planning, investment strategies, quarterly tax planning, and international pharmaceutical licensing agreements. Jennifer swooped in during my grief like an angel of mercy, appearing at my door with casseroles and concern. "Mom, you can't possibly manage all this alone," she'd say, her voice warm with what seemed like genuine worry. "These investment portfolios are incredibly complicated. Even I have trouble understanding them, and I work in pharmaceutical finance." I should have questioned why someone who worked in pharmaceutical finance was having trouble with basic investment accounts. But grief makes you grateful for any help, any concern, any sign that someone cares about your overwhelming situation. Jennifer started visiting every few days, always bringing helpful articles about financial planning for widows, estate management guides, and stories about elderly people being taken advantage of by unscrupulous financial advisors. "Mom, this article says 70% of widows make major financial mistakes in their first year after losing their spouse. We need to be so careful about protecting Dad's legacy." She'd sit at my kitchen table, spreading papers across the surface like she was organizing my entire future, color-coding documents and creating filing systems. "These quarterly statements are so confusing. Are you sure you understand what they're saying about market volatility and portfolio diversification?" Honestly, I didn't always understand them. Grief makes everything harder to process, and financial terminology that Robert had handled for decades felt like a foreign language. "You seem overwhelmed, Mom. That's completely normal for someone in your situation." Jennifer started carrying a small leather notebook, writing down what she called concerning incidents that demonstrated my growing confusion about financial matters. "Yesterday, you couldn't remember which investment account was for retirement versus education funding. You seemed confused about the property tax payment schedule and asked me to explain it 3 times. You asked me the same question about Dad's insurance policies multiple times in one conversation." The incidents felt wrong to me, like Jennifer was documenting conversations that hadn't happened or situations I remembered differently. But grief makes you doubt your own memory, makes you question whether you're thinking clearly about anything. That's when Dr. Marcus Chen appeared in my life, introduced like a guardian angel. "Mom, I found someone who specializes in helping families like ours navigate major financial transitions during grief," Jennifer announced one Tuesday morning, her voice bright with relief. Dr. Chen is a geriatric psychiatrist who works specifically with elderly people managing large estates after spousal death. Dr. Chen arrived that afternoon, distinguished, soft-spoken, carrying exactly the kind of medical authority that makes people trust instantly. Silver hair, expensive suit, leather briefcase filled with official-looking documents. But something felt fundamentally wrong about his questions from the moment he started speaking. "Margaret, how confident do you feel making major financial decisions right now, given your emotional state? Have you noticed any difficulty managing complex information since your husband's death 12 months ago?" Do you ever feel overwhelmed by the responsibility of managing $47 million without professional guidance? Have family members or friends expressed concern about your judgment regarding financial matters? I answered honestly. Yes, I felt overwhelmed. Yes, I sometimes had difficulty with complex financial information. Yes, I lacked confidence in major decisions. Yes, Jennifer had expressed concerns. Dr. Chen's pen moved across his notepad like he was building a legal case rather than providing medical care. His questions weren't about my emotional well-being or grief processing. They were about my competence to manage money. After he left, I felt unsettled in a way I couldn't quite identify. That evening, I found something in my medicine cabinet that stopped my heart cold. A bottle of donepezil with my name on it, prescribed 2 weeks ago according to the pharmacy label. Donepezil is specifically prescribed for Alzheimer's disease and dementia. I'd never seen this bottle before in my life. I'd never requested medication for memory problems. I'd never even discussed memory issues with any doctor. When I called Jennifer about it that night, her response was perfectly prepared, delivered without surprise or concern. "Don't you remember, Mom? Dr. Chen prescribed it during your evaluation. You seemed so relieved to have something to help with the memory issues you've been experiencing." I had no memory of this conversation because it had never happened. That night, I called my bank to verify some transactions on my statement that looked unfamiliar. "Margaret, those transfers were authorized using your online banking account 3 weeks ago," the representative explained. I'd never used online banking in my life. Could you tell me what computer was used to access the account? The login came from an IP address we have registered to Jennifer Sullivan. She's listed as an authorized user on your accounts. Jennifer was an authorized user on accounts I'd never given her access to. When was she added as authorized user? According to our records, 12 months ago, just after your husband's death. 12 months ago, when I was barely functional from grief, Jennifer had systematically gained access to $47 million. The next morning, Jennifer arrived early with coffee and pastries, like she was celebrating something. "Mom, how are you feeling today? Did you sleep well?" "Jennifer, the bank says you've been accessing my accounts." Her face showed no surprise, no guilt, no concern about being caught. "Mom, you asked me to help manage things while you're grieving. Don't you remember our conversation about it?" Another conversation that had never happened. "I think you should see Dr. Chen again. These memory gaps are getting much worse." That afternoon, I found Jennifer in Robert's office, photographing documents with her phone, financial statements, insurance policies, estate planning papers, investment portfolios. "What are you doing?" "Dr. Chen asked me to document Dad's estate structure for your comprehensive evaluation. It helps him understand the scope of your financial confusion." But Jennifer wasn't just photographing estate documents. She was photographing my personal medical records, family photos, anything with my signature or personal information. "Jennifer, why do you need photos of my medical records?" "For the psychiatric evaluation, Mom. Dr. Chen needs complete health history to understand your cognitive changes since Dad's death." When Jennifer left that evening, I carefully checked what she'd been photographing. Estate documents worth $47 million. Power of attorney forms I'd never signed. Medical records showing cognitive decline I'd never experienced. Bank statements showing transactions I'd never authorized. Insurance policy changes I'd never approved. Jennifer hadn't just been helping me grieve Robert's death. She'd been systematically documenting evidence that I was mentally incompetent to manage my inheritance. That night, I made a decision that would save my life. I started watching Jennifer the same way she'd been watching me. What I discovered over the next 2 weeks would shock me more than I'd ever imagined. The first thing I discovered was that Dr. Chen had already written his psychiatric evaluation report 2 weeks before conducting the evaluation. I found it on Jennifer's laptop while she was in the bathroom during one of her visits. Patient presence with significant cognitive decline following spousal death. Memory deficits, confusion regarding financial matters, and inability to manage complex decisions suggest early-stage dementia requiring immediate intervention. He'd documented conversations we'd never had, symptoms I'd never displayed, and medical history that didn't exist. The report included specific recommendations for my care. Patient demonstrates poor judgment regarding $47 million estate management. Recommendation: immediate psychiatric facility evaluation to determine competency for financial decision-making. But Dr. Chen wasn't just writing false medical reports. He was preparing comprehensive legal documentation for guardianship proceedings. Jennifer had recruited a psychiatrist to provide false medical testimony that would strip me of legal control over my inheritance. The second discovery was worse. Jennifer had been systematically changing my financial accounts for months, using the online access she'd gained during my grief. Online banking access I'd never authorized. Investment changes I'd never approved. Insurance policies I'd never signed. Beneficiary changes I'd never requested. My signature looked perfect on every document, but I'd never signed any of them. Margaret, your daughter explained that you've been having difficulty remembering financial transactions. My investment advisor told me when I called to verify recent changes. She provided medical documentation from Dr. Chen confirming your cognitive decline and recommending supervised financial management. Jennifer had been using false medical reports to convince financial institutions that I was mentally incompetent. Every bank, every investment firm, every insurance company had been told I was developing dementia, and that Jennifer needed authority to protect my assets from my poor judgment. The systematic nature of her deception was breathtaking. The third discovery terrified me. I found a file on Jennifer's computer labeled Riverside Manor, Admission Process. Riverside Manor was a psychiatric facility that specialized in elderly patients with dementia and cognitive decline. But this wasn't medical care. It was permanent institutional custody. The admission paperwork was already completed. Jennifer had signed as legal guardian, authorized by Dr. Chen's medical recommendation. Patient requires secure environment to prevent financial exploitation of her $47 million estate by predatory individuals who might take advantage of her cognitive decline. Jennifer was planning to have me locked in a psychiatric facility to prevent anyone from accessing my inheritance except her. The facility paperwork included financial guardian authorization, giving Jennifer complete control over my estate while I was institutionalized. $47 million would be entirely accessible to Jennifer while I was locked away, declared mentally incompetent by corrupt medical authority. But the most terrifying discovery came when I researched Dr. Chen's previous patients. 12 elderly women, all wealthy widows, all evaluated by Dr. Chen for cognitive decline, all committed to psychiatric facilities within weeks of evaluation, all dead within 6 months of commitment. Their daughters inherited everything. Margaret Patterson, 78, pharmaceutical stock portfolio worth $12 million. Dorothy Martinez, 74, real estate empire worth $23 million. Ruth Davidson, 81, technology company inheritance worth $15 million. Dr. Chen wasn't just providing false psychiatric evaluations. He was part of a systematic operation that institutionalized wealthy elderly women and eliminated them once inheritance transfers were complete. Jennifer wasn't just planning to steal my money. She was planning to murder me. The insurance policy she'd taken out on my life 2 weeks ago confirmed it. $5 million, payable to Jennifer as beneficiary, with accidental death coverage and no suicide exclusion. Jennifer would inherit $47 million through legal guardianship, then collect $5 million more when I died accidentally in psychiatric custody. But there was something else I discovered that made Jennifer's betrayal even more devastating. She wasn't some desperate daughter who'd gotten in over her head with criminals. Jennifer had been planning this systematically since before Robert's death. The file I found on her computer contained correspondence dating back 14 months, communications with Dr. Chen, research into my financial accounts. background checks on Riverside Manor, studies of inheritance law and guardianship procedures. Jennifer had been preparing to destroy my life while I was caring for my dying husband. That night, I sat in Robert's office, processing the scope of Jennifer's betrayal. My daughter had recruited criminals to systematically destroy my mental competency, steal my inheritance, and murder me for insurance money. She'd been planning it for over a year, waiting patiently for Robert to die so she could execute her scheme. But Jennifer had made one critical mistake. She assumed her 71-year-old mother was exactly what she appeared to be, a confused widow overwhelmed by financial complexity. Jennifer had no idea who she was really fighting. The next morning, I began gathering evidence that would destroy her completely. What I discovered about the scope of their operation would shock me even more. 2 weeks later, Jennifer arrived with official papers and a woman I'd never met. "Mom, this is Patricia Williams from Elder Care Legal Services," Jennifer said, her voice carrying new authority and confidence. "She specializes in protecting elderly people from making poor financial decisions during emotional distress." Patricia spread documents across my dining table with the efficiency of someone who'd processed hundreds of similar cases. Professional folders, legal forms, medical authorizations, financial transfer documents. "Margaret, these papers authorize temporary psychiatric evaluation to ensure you're capable of managing your $47 million inheritance responsibly," Patricia explained in soothing tones. Temporary evaluation that would become permanent commitment once Dr. Chen provided his predetermined false testimony. "How long would this evaluation take?" I asked. Patricia and Jennifer exchanged a quick glance that confirmed they'd rehearsed this conversation. Typically 30 to 60 days for comprehensive assessment of cognitive function and financial competency. 2 months locked away while Jennifer liquidated everything Robert and I had built together over 4 decades. "What if I decide not to sign these papers?" Jennifer's voice took on an edge I'd never heard before, revealing something cold beneath her caring facade. "Mom, Dr. Chen explained that your condition might deteriorate rapidly without proper intervention. We can't risk you making decisions that could destroy Dad's legacy or put you in danger." Another fabricated conversation with her corrupt psychiatrist. I looked at these women who'd spent weeks planning to destroy my life, steal my inheritance, and ultimately murder me. Jennifer sat watching me with barely concealed anticipation, like she was already spending the $47 million. Patricia checked her expensive watch like she had other elderly women to institutionalize before dinner. And I realized this was the moment I'd been preparing for. "I'll sign the papers," I said quietly. Jennifer's relief was visible and immediate. She hugged me like she actually cared about my well-being. "Mom, you're making the right decision. Riverside Manor is beautiful. Dr. Chen will take such good care of you there." Patricia witnessed my signature with professional efficiency, stamping documents and filing copies. "The transport will arrive at 9 tomorrow morning. Please pack only essential personal items." That night, Jennifer helped me pack with false sympathy and manufactured concern. "Just bring basics, Mom. They provide everything you need for comfortable living." She folded clothes into my suitcase while chatting about visiting schedules and therapy programs. "Dr. Chen says family visits are important for emotional stability during evaluation. I'll come see you twice a week." Jennifer planned to visit me in psychiatric custody while systematically stealing my inheritance. The next morning arrived gray and cold, matching my apparent mood. Jennifer sat beside me in Patricia's car, chatting about how this was a new beginning, a chance for me to get proper help with my confusion. "How are you feeling, Mom? Nervous about this new chapter in your life?" "A little," I said, letting my voice shake appropriately. "I just hope I'm making the right decision for everyone." "You are. Dr. Chen will help you understand what's been happening with your memory and judgment." When we arrived at Riverside Manor, the scene was exactly what I'd expected. Institutional buildings designed to contain people, not treat them. high fences disguised as landscaping features, staff members who processed admissions like assembly line workers rather than medical professionals, a psychiatric facility that specialized in making wealthy elderly women disappear permanently. Jennifer walked me to the admissions desk with her arm around my shoulders in a performance of loving concern. "This is my mother, Margaret Sullivan. Dr. Chen recommended immediate evaluation for cognitive decline." The admissions coordinator had been expecting me, with paperwork already prepared. "Margaret, we've reviewed your medical history. Dr. Chen's evaluation indicates significant cognitive decline requiring secure environment for your safety." Secure environment, prison terminology disguised as medical care. "How long will the evaluation take?" "That depends on your progress and response to treatment. Some patients need extended care for their protection. Extended care until death, based on Dr. Chen's previous patients who'd never left Riverside Manor alive." Jennifer completed financial authorization forms giving her complete control over my estate during institutionalization. "Mom, I'll handle everything while you focus on getting better and understanding your condition." She signed papers accessing my bank accounts, investment portfolios, insurance policies, and estate planning documents. $47 million now under Jennifer's complete control. "The comprehensive evaluation begins tomorrow with Dr. Chen," the coordinator explained. "He'll determine your specific treatment plan and prognosis." Treatment plan that would end with my death and Jennifer's complete inheritance of everything Robert and I had accumulated. As Jennifer prepared to leave, she whispered something that made my blood freeze. "I love you, Mom. This is really for the best, and Dad would have wanted you to be safe." She walked out of Riverside Manor believing she'd successfully institutionalized her mother and gained access to $47 million. Jennifer had no idea that her 71-year-old mother had been planning this moment for months. She had no idea that every conversation, every document signing, every manipulation had been carefully documented. And she had no idea that the real psychiatric evaluation scheduled for tomorrow wouldn't be conducted by Dr. Chen. The 3-day countdown had begun. But Jennifer's confidence was about to become the biggest mistake of her life. My first night at Riverside Manor revealed something that changed everything I thought I knew about Jennifer's crimes. I wasn't the only wealthy elderly woman with a concerned daughter and Dr. Chen's recommendation for psychiatric evaluation. Margaret Patterson, 78, admitted 3 weeks ago. Her daughter Linda worried about confusion regarding her $12 million pharmaceutical stock portfolio. Dorothy Martinez, 74, admitted 6 weeks ago. Her daughter Susan concerned about poor judgment managing her $23 million real estate empire. Ruth Davidson, 81, admitted 2 months ago. Her daughter Carol troubled by memory problems affecting her $15 million technology company inheritance. All evaluated by Dr. Chen for cognitive decline. All daughters granted financial guardianship during evaluation. All patients showing rapid decline under psychiatric treatment. But when I spoke with these women privately during common room time, they showed no signs of cognitive decline whatsoever. Margaret Patterson discussed pharmaceutical regulations and drug development with precision that would impress industry experts. Dorothy Martinez analyzed real estate market trends and property development with sophisticated understanding. Ruth Davidson explained technology patents and software licensing with engineering expertise. These weren't confused elderly women losing their mental capacity. These were accomplished professionals being systematically destroyed by their daughters and Dr. Chen. "My daughter Linda said she found these pills in my cabinet," Margaret Patterson told me, showing a bottle identical to the donepezil I'd discovered, "but I've never taken medication for memory problems in my life." The same planted evidence, the same manufactured symptoms, the same false medical documentation. "Dr. Chen says the medication confusion proves my cognitive decline," Dorothy Martinez explained. "Susan uses it as evidence that I can't manage my real estate investments anymore." Linda Patterson, Susan Martinez, Carol Davidson. I was seeing the horrifying pattern now, This wasn't about individual daughters stealing from their mothers. This was an organized operation recruiting daughters to systematically exploit wealthy elderly women. But what I discovered about Jennifer's real situation would shock me more than the scope of the conspiracy. The truth came from an unexpected source that changed everything. Patricia Williams, the legal specialist who'd processed my admission papers, made a critical mistake. She left her briefcase in the common room while speaking with staff about processing another patient admission. Inside were files that revealed the true scope of Jennifer's involvement and desperation. Jennifer hadn't been recruited by this organization like the other daughters. Jennifer had sought them out months ago. Pharmaceutical fraud prosecution, Jennifer Sullivan, read the file header. Federal charges filed against Jennifer 8 months before Robert's death. Securities fraud, research falsification, illegal drug testing, regulatory violations. Potential sentence, 25 years in federal prison. Legal defense costs estimated $47 million. Jennifer faced complete financial and personal destruction unless she could access my inheritance for her criminal defense. But the pharmaceutical fraud charges were connected to something that made my hands shake as I read. Robert's patents weren't just valuable intellectual property generating our wealth. They were evidence in Jennifer's criminal case. The pharmaceutical research that created our $47 million inheritance was the same research Jennifer had illegally manipulated for her fraud scheme. Robert had unknowingly developed patents that would be used as evidence to convict our daughter of federal crimes. Jennifer needed my inheritance not just for lifestyle maintenance or greed. She needed it for legal defense against charges that could destroy her life completely. But stealing $47 million through psychiatric commitment wasn't Jennifer's only crime or final plan. The insurance policy I'd discovered wasn't her primary strategy. It was her backup plan for additional funding. According to Patricia's files, Jennifer's primary plan was much more systematic. She planned to maintain me in psychiatric custody while liquidating my entire estate over 6 months. Once the inheritance was converted to assets she could control and hide from federal prosecutors, I would die in an accident that appeared to be suicide brought on by depression over institutional custody. Suicide would void the insurance policy, but Jennifer would have already stolen and hidden $47 million from federal seizure. The other daughters in the organization had followed identical patterns with their mothers: psychiatric commitment, systematic estate liquidation, staged suicide, complete inheritance theft before federal authorities could investigate. 12 wealthy elderly women murdered for their inheritances to fund their daughters' criminal defense costs, and Jennifer was planning to make me number 13. But what I learned about Dr. Chen's personal connection to our family revealed why Jennifer's plan was even more sophisticated and vicious than I'd realized. Dr. Chen wasn't just a corrupt psychiatrist recruited by Jennifer to provide false medical testimony. He had a personal vendetta against our family that went back 20 years. The truth was hidden in medical licensing records and criminal case files I found in Patricia's briefcase. Dr. Marcus Chen, son of Dr. William Chen, pharmaceutical researcher convicted of illegal human experimentation 20 years ago. Dr. William Chen had died in federal prison serving a life sentence for crimes that destroyed hundreds of lives through illegal drug testing. And the federal investigation that convicted him had been built on evidence provided by my husband Robert during his pharmaceutical research career. Jennifer hadn't just recruited a corrupt psychiatrist for false medical evaluations. She'd recruited the son of a man whose life was destroyed by evidence our family had provided to federal prosecutors. Dr. Chen's psychiatric evaluation wasn't just medical fraud for money. It was personal revenge against the family that sent his father to prison to die. But Jennifer and Dr. Chen had made one critical mistake in their planning. They assumed that Robert had been the primary investigator in Dr. William Chen's case. They were wrong about who had really gathered the evidence. Robert had provided research data, but he wasn't the federal investigator. The federal agent who'd built the case against Dr. William Chen, who'd gathered evidence for 2 decades, who'd specialized in pharmaceutical fraud prosecution, was someone they'd never suspected. someone who'd spent 40 years learning to recognize exactly the kind of systematic fraud they were attempting. Someone who'd been quietly gathering evidence against them for months while appearing to be a confused elderly widow. Someone whose expertise in detecting pharmaceutical crime was about to save her life and destroy their criminal organization. My 40 years as a federal investigator specializing in pharmaceutical fraud were about to be deployed against people who had no idea who they were really fighting. But what Jennifer didn't know was that I'd been investigating her pharmaceutical fraud case since before Robert's death. And what Dr. Chen didn't know was that his father's conviction was based on evidence I'd spent 20 years gathering as an undercover federal agent. The countdown to their destruction had already begun, and they were about to discover exactly who they'd chosen to target. The next morning brought the psychiatric evaluation that would determine my fate. But the psychiatrist who entered my room wasn't Dr. Chen. "Margaret, I'm Dr. Patricia Williams. I understand there's been some confusion about your mental competency evaluation." Not Patricia, the legal coordinator, but Dr. Patricia Williams, licensed psychiatrist and my former colleague from the FBI Pharmaceutical Fraud Division. Jennifer and Dr. Chen were about to discover that their 71-year-old victim had spent 40 years investigating pharmaceutical fraud for the federal government. "Patricia, it's been too long," I said, dropping the confused widow act completely. "Margaret, when Agent Mitchell told me you were working undercover on an elder abuse case, I couldn't believe it. You retired only 5 years ago." "I came out of retirement when Jennifer started showing signs of pharmaceutical fraud. The case became personal when she recruited criminals to steal my inheritance." Dr. Williams pulled out recording equipment I recognized from decades of federal investigations. "How long have you been gathering evidence?" 12 months, since I first noticed Jennifer's financial irregularities before Robert's death. I opened my suitcase and removed surveillance equipment Jennifer had never suspected existed. Digital recorders, financial tracking software, photographic evidence, communication intercepts, documentation protocols. Every conversation with Jennifer, every document signing, every manipulation attempt has been recorded and documented according to federal evidence standards. Dr. Williams stared at months of systematic evidence gathering. "Margaret, this is enough to convict an entire criminal organization." That was always the intention. Jennifer thought she was exploiting a confused widow. She was actually providing evidence to a federal agent with 40 years of experience investigating pharmaceutical fraud. But the evidence against Jennifer was only part of what I'd discovered during my undercover operation. "Patricia, this organization has murdered 12 wealthy elderly women. Jennifer was planning to make me number 13. I showed her files I'd copied from Patricia's briefcase, medical records I'd photographed, financial documents proving systematic inheritance theft. The other patients here, Margaret Patterson, Dorothy Martinez, Ruth Davidson, they're not confused. They're being systematically poisoned with psychiatric medications to create artificial cognitive decline symptoms." Dr. Williams examined the medical evidence with growing professional horror. "Margaret, this is the largest elder abuse organization the FBI has ever investigated. It gets worse. Jennifer isn't just stealing from me for greed. She's facing federal pharmaceutical fraud charges and needs $47 million for criminal defense." I opened files showing Jennifer's criminal case, her illegal research, her securities fraud charges, her potential prison sentence. The inheritance she's trying to steal was earned from the same pharmaceutical investigations that will be used to convict her. Dr. Williams looked at evidence connecting Jennifer's crimes to the inheritance she was desperately trying to steal. "There's more. Dr. Chen isn't just a corrupt psychiatrist. His father was Dr. William Chen, convicted of pharmaceutical fraud based on evidence I gathered 20 years ago. So this is personal revenge combined with financial theft." "Exactly. And Jennifer has no idea that the woman she's trying to institutionalize spent 40 years prosecuting people exactly like her." That afternoon, Agent Sarah Mitchell arrived to coordinate the final phase of our operation, Margaret, the evidence you've gathered exceeds anything we hoped for when you volunteered for this undercover assignment. Sarah, when Jennifer started showing signs of pharmaceutical fraud, I couldn't ignore it. When she recruited criminals to steal from elderly women, it became a federal case. Agent Mitchell spread evidence across the conference table. Your recordings show systematic elder abuse, insurance fraud, pharmaceutical fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder across multiple states. How many people are we arresting? 47 network members across 6 states. Jennifer's organization was larger than we initially suspected, with operations in 12 facilities. But the scope of arrests was only part of our success. Margaret, the other elderly women here, we're moving them to protective custody and initiating complete financial recovery. Your evidence provides legal basis for returning every stolen dollar. 12 families would get justice and their inheritances back because I'd volunteered to be institutionalized and gather evidence. What about Jennifer? Jennifer has been intercepting communications with her network coordinators for months, unaware that every call has been monitored by FBI surveillance. Agent Mitchell played recordings of Jennifer planning my murder with cold calculation and professional detachment. The insurance payout will cover our operational costs while we liquidate her remaining assets systematically. How long until she's completely dependent on network funding? 3 weeks maximum. The psychiatric commitment creates perfect cover for extended estate access without suspicion. Jennifer had been planning my death with businesslike efficiency, not realizing every word was being recorded for federal prosecution. Sarah, when do we execute coordinated arrests? Tomorrow. Jennifer is scheduled to visit for what she believes is a progress report on your psychological decline. But Jennifer's visit wouldn't be a progress report on my supposed mental deterioration. It would be the moment she discovered her confused mother was actually a federal agent who'd spent 12 months building an airtight case against her. The countdown had reached its final day. Tomorrow, Jennifer would learn exactly who she'd been fighting for over a year. And Dr. Chen would discover that his father's conviction was deeply personal. The 71-year-old widow was about to reveal herself as the federal prosecutor who'd destroyed both their lives. Day 3 arrived gray and cold. Jennifer walked into Riverside Manor carrying flowers and wearing the expression of a loving daughter visiting her declining mother. She had no idea that FBI agents were positioned throughout the building. She had no idea that Dr. Chen was already in federal custody, and she had no idea that her 71-year-old mother was about to systematically destroy her life. "Hi, Mom. How are you feeling today?" I looked at my daughter, this woman who'd recruited criminals to steal my inheritance and planned to murder me for insurance money. "I'm feeling much clearer than I have in months, Jennifer." She sat down with false concern, notebook ready to document my supposed confusion. "Dr. Chen says the medication is helping with your memory confusion." "Actually, Jennifer, Dr. Chen won't be providing any more evaluations." "What do you mean?" "He was arrested yesterday for pharmaceutical fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy to commit murder." Jennifer's face went white with shock and growing panic. "That's impossible. You're having paranoid delusions." "Am I? Let me show you something." I pulled out the digital recorder I'd been wearing for 12 months. Every conversation, every manipulation, every moment you thought you were exploiting a confused widow. It's all been recorded according to federal evidence standards. Jennifer stared at evidence that would send her to federal prison for life. "Mom, you don't understand what you're doing." "I understand perfectly. I've been investigating pharmaceutical fraud for 40 years with the FBI." The color drained completely from Jennifer's face as the magnitude of her miscalculation became clear. "You retired 5 years ago. You're just a widow who can't manage money." "I came out of retirement when you started showing signs of fraud. The case became personal when you recruited criminals to steal my inheritance and murder me." I opened files showing Jennifer's pharmaceutical fraud charges, her illegal research, her securities violations. The $47 million inheritance you tried to steal, that's reward money I earned prosecuting pharmaceutical criminals like you. Jennifer looked at evidence of her federal charges with growing desperation. The pharmaceutical research you falsified was connected to cases I'd been building for decades. Mom, they told me you were just a confused widow. They said this would be easy. Who told you that, Jennifer? The organization. They specialize in elderly women with large inheritances who seem vulnerable. Jennifer was admitting to conspiracy, while FBI agents recorded every word. Did you know Dr. Chen's father was Dr. William Chen? Jennifer nodded, panic growing in her eyes. Did you know I was the federal agent who convicted his father for pharmaceutical fraud? Jennifer's expression shifted to absolute horror as the personal connections became clear. You sent Dr. Chen's father to prison? I spent 20 years gathering evidence against Dr. William Chen's illegal human experimentation. He died in federal prison serving a life sentence based on my investigation. Jennifer realized she'd recruited the son of a man whose life I'd destroyed for justice. Dr. Chen wanted revenge against our family, and you gave him the perfect opportunity. At that moment, Agent Mitchell entered the room with federal marshals. Jennifer Sullivan, you're under arrest for elder abuse, conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted murder, and pharmaceutical securities violations. Jennifer looked between Agent Mitchell and me with dawning comprehension of the trap she'd walked into. You've been working together this entire time. For 12 months. Since before your pharmaceutical fraud charges were filed. As handcuffs clicked around Jennifer's wrists, she stared at me with pure hatred and disbelief. You destroyed my life. You destroyed your own life when you chose to steal from elderly women and plan their murders for your criminal defense funding. Agent Mitchell read Jennifer her rights while she processed the magnitude of her miscalculation. The other women here, Margaret Patterson, Dorothy Martinez, Ruth Davidson, are they federal agents too? No, Jennifer. They're real victims. Wealthy elderly women whose daughters recruited criminals to steal their inheritances. Jennifer had been operating within a facility containing actual victims of the crimes she'd committed systematically. How many of us are you arresting? 47 network members across 6 states. Your organization was the largest elder abuse operation in FBI history. But Jennifer's arrest was only the beginning of the justice cascade. Over the next hour, FBI agents executed coordinated arrests throughout the facility and across multiple states. Patricia Williams was arrested while processing admission papers for another elderly victim. Dr. Chen's associate physicians were arrested in their private practices. Financial coordinators were arrested in their offices while transferring stolen assets. Network recruiters were arrested while training new daughters to exploit their mothers. The entire elder abuse organization was dismantled in coordinated raids that had been planned for months. But the personal satisfaction came when Jennifer realized the full scope of her failure. The inheritance you tried to steal was money I earned prosecuting people like you. Your pharmaceutical fraud charges were based on research connected to my federal cases. Dr. Chen's father died in prison because of evidence I gathered over 20 years. You recruited the son of a man I'd convicted to help you steal money I'd earned convicting his father. The irony was perfect and devastating. Jennifer had tried to steal reward money from the investigator who'd earned it prosecuting pharmaceutical criminals. She'd recruited personal enemies to help commit crimes against the agent who'd destroyed their families. And she'd planned to murder the federal prosecutor who specialized in exactly the crimes she was committing. Jennifer, you spent 12 months planning to destroy me. I spent 12 months building evidence to destroy you. As agents escorted Jennifer from Riverside Manor, she looked back at me with complete comprehension. Her 71-year-old mother hadn't just survived her scheme. She'd systematically documented every crime for federal prosecution while appearing to be the perfect victim. Jennifer faced 25 years in federal prison for pharmaceutical fraud, plus life sentences for elder abuse conspiracy and attempted murder. The daughter who'd planned to inherit $47 million would spend the rest of her life in federal custody. But my work wasn't finished. Margaret Patterson, Dorothy Martinez, and Ruth Davidson were moved to protective custody, while their stolen inheritances were recovered through federal asset forfeiture. 12 families received complete justice because of evidence I'd gathered during my undercover operation. The largest elder abuse organization in FBI history was completely dismantled, and Jennifer learned exactly who she'd been fighting. Sometimes the people who underestimate you create exactly the evidence needed to destroy them permanently. 1 month later, I stood before the Senate Judiciary Committee, delivering testimony that would reshape elder protection laws nationwide. Senators, my name is Margaret Sullivan. I'm a retired FBI agent who spent 40 years investigating pharmaceutical fraud. Recently, I came out of retirement when my daughter recruited criminals to steal my inheritance and have me declared mentally incompetent. The hearing room was packed with families who'd experienced similar systematic exploitation by their own children. The organization that targeted my family operated in 6 states, recruited 47 criminal associates, and murdered 12 elderly women for their inheritances to fund various criminal defense costs. I clicked to slides showing the scope of network operations across multiple states. But this case revealed something more disturbing. These networks specifically target elderly professionals because we have substantial assets, and our children often underestimate our continued mental capacity and professional competence. Senator Williams leaned forward with obvious concern. Agent Sullivan, what legislative changes would prevent this systematic exploitation? 3 critical reforms. First, mandatory psychiatric evaluation verification by independent medical professionals with no financial connection to family members. Second, federal monitoring of large inheritance transfers during psychiatric commitments. Third, criminal penalties for family members who provide false medical testimony for financial gain. The legislation that emerged from my testimony created the most comprehensive elder protection framework in American history. But the personal satisfaction came from Jennifer's cooperation testimony. She appeared via video link from federal prison, explaining recruitment techniques and network operations to help convict remaining members. The organization taught us to identify elderly parents who appeared vulnerable but had substantial assets. We were trained to manufacture evidence of cognitive decline through systematic manipulation and false medical documentation. Jennifer's cooperation reduced her sentence from life to 25 years without possibility of parole. She would spend her remaining productive years in federal prison, knowing she'd destroyed her relationship with the only family she had left. But the real victory was measured in lives protected and families restored. Margaret Patterson recovered her $12 million pharmaceutical stock portfolio and established a foundation preventing elder abuse in medical families. Dorothy Martinez regained her $23 million real estate empire and created housing for elderly abuse survivors. Ruth Davidson restored her $15 million technology company inheritance and developed monitoring software that detects financial exploitation patterns. 12 families received complete justice and financial recovery because of evidence gathered during my 12-month undercover operation. Today, I work with the FBI training agents to recognize sophisticated elder abuse operations that target accomplished professionals. The skills I used to investigate pharmaceutical fraud for 40 years are now protecting elderly Americans from systematic exploitation by their own families. Jennifer writes letters from prison, asking for forgiveness and claiming she was manipulated by the organization into committing crimes. But her letters contain something that shows she still doesn't understand the magnitude of her crimes against vulnerable people. Mom, I never intended for anyone to get hurt. The organization told me this was just about protecting elderly people from poor financial decisions during grief. Jennifer still frames theft and planned murder as protection. Some people never accept responsibility for choosing to harm vulnerable individuals for money. What's the hardest lesson you've had to learn about people? Share your wisdom in the comments below, because real recognizes real. And your experience might save someone else from going through what I did. Whether it's recognizing manipulation, trusting your professional instincts when family members seem suspicious, or finding courage to fight back when people think they can exploit your age or grief, your story matters. If this story helped you recognize warning signs in your own life, hit that subscribe button for more stories about finding your strength when people underestimate you. And if you know someone who could benefit from understanding these warning signs, an elderly parent, a neighbor, a friend who's mentioned concerning behavior from family members, please share this with them. Knowledge is the best protection we have. At 71, I've learned that surviving betrayal by people you love doesn't make you bitter. It makes you wise. Wise about genuine concern versus systematic manipulation. Wise about trusting your professional expertise over family pressure. Wise about the fact that protecting yourself sometimes requires fighting people who see you as a source of money rather than a human being deserving respect. Your inner wisdom matters. It's been earned through decades of experience that younger people don't possess. Trust it, protect it, and never let anyone convince you that age makes you powerless.